Alrighty, we're speaking with Jason Bonham. His Led Zeppelin evening is going to be at the Rialto Theatre on August 13th, celebrating 50 years of physical graffiti. Jason, thanks for taking time with us here in Tucson today. Appreciate it.
It is my pleasure, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. So tell me a little bit about the show. Are you doing the entire physical graffiti album or just some songs off of it and a bunch of other Zeppelin? How's the show going to work?
Foolishly, I took on the challenge of where can you go and see the whole of physical graffiti played from start to finish, and plus others. So it was one of those ideas that came about. Obviously, I didn't talk to anybody else in the band, as I normally don't, and threw it on everybody. And we'd played all of the songs at different times, but never all at the same time. So then it was, okay, how can we make a show of it? How can we make this work? So I always say, don't think you're going to come to the show and see it in the order of which you listen to it. Now, that would be too easy for people to plan their toilet breaks or go to get a drink at the bar when they think, oh, yeah, this is not one of my favorites. I'm going to go and get a drink now. So we leave it basically, and even on some occasions, I've changed it on the band, and we've at the last minute, it took about 5 shows to get comfortable with a running order of the whole album. And then if that after the hour and 45 minutes of that, you're still not satisfied and you make enough noise, we might go back to the beginning or 1 or 2 or Led Zeppelin 4 and play some others. So it has worked so well. It became such a popular thing. As to my agent, who said, I think you'll be a very limited audience for this album. And last tour was our most successful tour in 20 years. Yeah.
So that's kind of cool because usually when you see a band, revisit an album, they do it in the playing order. So you're not doing it in the playing order. You're keeping people guessing.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at it as a show and just said, how could I? So I tease them a bit. We start off similar. So everyone thinks, oh, yeah, this is it, So you get that excitement of when you hear Custard Pie. And just the way I put it together, you'll have to see it because it was a work in progress. We got 3 shows in, and I had this idea, and I was looking online for footage or for audio of radio stations the first time they got their hands on physical graffiti and the first time they were allowed to play the opening track. But I couldn't find anything. So we put together I had this team of people in Hollywood that all thought they had good radio voices. And literally we imagined what it would have been like if we could have found the footage of people saying, I've had this in my hands all week, but tonight we're going to play it for the first time in its entirety. And it just for me, it gave me chills. So the whole setup before the show, this static radio tuning through different stations, all the songs that were popular at that week it came out. So it really did then give us this life of like when it kicked in, the feeling you get from the audience is everyone's like, oh, it suddenly starts and they go, please welcome in its entirety for the first time ever, Physical Graffiti. And it's like all the different DJs, Physical Graffiti, and then into Custard Pie. And the roar, it's so exciting. So yeah, it's become probably one of my favorite tours I've ever done. And as I said 20 years, 15 years we've been doing this now. 15 years. And it's the first time we ever attempted to do an album version.
So this is going to be August 13th here at the Rialto Theatre. You can get your ticket to the Rialto Theatre box office or online at klpx.com. So Jason, who is in the band?
Oh, well, the guys now have been with me a long time. As I said, the only change that came was the first tour, we had a different keyboard player and a different bass player, but they left pretty quick. They left it like the beginning. So Dorian and Alex Howland He's on keys, guitar, and every other instrument we hand him. He's half of our John Paul Jones. And then Dorian Hartsong, who's been with us since 2011. He completes the full John Paul Jones side of the stage. And then it was 8 years ago now, I found this guitar player called Jimmy Sakurai, which is known as Mr. Jimmy. And he is from Tokyo, and he is just an amazing human being. He has dedicated his entire life to being Jimmy Page. And he even has his own movie called Mr. Jimmy. And it's about him dedicating his life, to the studying the guitar work of Jimmy Page. I mean, he's the same height as Jimmy. He looks like Jimmy. He's the same weight.
Oh, wow.
It is really uncanny. Everything about him, his tone he gets, everything. It's, there's a lot of different things about Jimmy Page that some people forget when you're emulating Jimmy Page. He wasn't a super clean guitar player. He wasn't like a thing. He made it. He gave it to you like there was a passion. Like it was hard to bend that string. You feel the emotion. And when we got together with Mr. Jimmy and we did a show or did a rehearsal together, and I said, can you play the 1973 version that was in the movie Song Remains the Same of Since I've Been Loving You? And he went, hey. That was it. And he suddenly did this whole intro, just like we remember from the movie. And I went, that's it. I'm sorry. If you can do that, that's, so and then on the last year, we started to add songs we hadn't done. I'd run away from, like Achilles' Last Stand and Heartbreaker and the whole of Dazed and Confused, the 40-minute version with all the chase, all the fast stuff and all the bow stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. So, and then James Dillon is the singer that started this with me. I met him in 2010. Actually, I think I met him in 2009 when he was about 260 pounds. And I went, you sound great. You just don't look like a frontman yet. And then he lost a ton of weight. I gained it. And he called me up and said, he goes, I'm down now to think. And I went, okay, we're going to do it. So, and he was, he's on the artwork and also on vocals and guitar. He likes to say he was a guitarist first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Does he play on stage guitar at all, or does he just stick to the frontman part?
No, he does. He plays guitar. I always say, especially when now we're doing album songs, you think about In the Light, and there's a lot of parts going on. Jimmy, one of the things I always wanted to do was, when we did the live stuff, if some of the stuff had a lot of overdubs, to be slightly, to be a little bit different to the way the Zeppelin live performance was, we have a keyboard guy and a bass guy, and we also have a guy that on the songs that don't have keys, Alex is a very good guitar player. And then when there is extra parts even needed, especially some of them like acoustic, like on, like Over the Hills and things. And there's, you've got the other two guitar parts going on, two electric parts. And then you have that strummy acoustic going on. As I said, we're very fortunate. We have a guitarist that can sing. That's what I like to say. That's what he likes to say it. We have a guitarist that can sing, so he can pick up a guitar, or if we don't need him on something, he'll put it down. We've been doing it for a long time now, so he doesn't like to push us on the guitar playing. He just says, I'm here if you need the help, if we need to add, some extra layers.
So it sounds like you guys have been a pretty tight unit for quite a while now, too.
Yeah, it would be hard to change. I mean, we had another guitar player that I'd known for a long, long time. Me and him had been friends since '88. A guy called Tony Catania. And now he had been, and he just got to the point where he was like, I think we'd done it for like 9 years at that point, and he'd done a different version of this project with me before that. So for him, he just said, I'm kind of, I want to move on and do my own thing. So that was fine. But at
So,
that point, I found at the same time, I was being told at one point, but to change the name from Experience to Evening. So when the new guy came it was in some ways, a new chapter. So it worked perfect.
so yeah, obviously, Physical Graffiti is a very long album, a big album. Is there an intermission on the show, or is it straight through and then an encore at the end, or how do you do this?
We we just go through. We don't even if we went off stage, we wouldn't be able to get back up anymore and come back and play. We're getting on now. You
How
know,
long's
but
the set?
2 hours and 15 minutes.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been it's down to and that's the abbreviated version. On the first two shows, I felt like we needed to do more stuff. So we were doing 2 hours 30, 2 hours 40, and the certain venues are like going, "Hey, dude, that's just too long." Yeah, the fans might love it, but that's just too long. I said, "You tell Springsteen that." Just
Yeah.
imagine, yeah. But I remember seeing Guns N' Roses, and they did like 3 hours 40 minutes. I
Yep.
remember that at 2 hours, I hadn't heard anything I remembered yet, and, and I was going. And they didn't go on till 10 in the evening, and I'm like, okay, we're at midnight, and I'm waiting to hear like at least a Sweet Child of Mine, or Welcome to the Jungle, which is not going to be till the end. So,
Yes.
so at least one of the things we did with this was I said, we couldn't do the album in the order of it was, otherwise there's no way you could play Kashmir so early in the show.
Yeah.
It would be a very early part to play Kashmir. So the way we put it together, it works out really well.
I saw another a big band perform one of their big albums in its entirety, and it was a different experience because all their big songs were side one. And then side two, none of them, like all of a sudden the show, big, 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 and then just this lull for the next 30, 40 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah,
I understand why you're doing that because I've actually,
yeah,
as a fan, experienced it going, yeah, they could have mixed this up a little bit better. Live, it's a different
yeah,
experience.
exactly. I mean, when we all know when we put together a vinyl thing, you're trying to capture an audience when you first put the record on. Most of the time you want your biggest song, your best song, to be the opening song, or at least something to capture somebody by, to lead them into the album, right? I
Hmm.
mean, there was painstakingly hours would go by, days, weeks. I could imagine. I know what it was like when I was doing, original stuff and putting together Bonham albums, and the arguments we'd have over what was the first song, and then what was going to be track three. Track three would be as important as track one.
Hmm.
You could kind of slide off a little bit with track two, but track three had to be even better than track one. It was where you put the big hit, and then you start looking at people's albums and going, okay, you got that one, and then okay, yeah, it's either usually second track or third track on the album. It was the hit.
Hmm.
It's so and
Yeah,
then
and live
so
doesn't
on.
necessarily work the same way.
No, it doesn't. So what I wanted to try and do as well was obviously there's acoustic songs that are featured heavily on the album, and also the fact now I know that there was a magazine that came out recently, a Mojo, and it gave the stories of each song from Physical Graffiti. So I had no idea that some of the songs were from Night Flight, right? Night Flight, that was a Led Zeppelin 4 outtake.
Oh, wow.
That was supposed to be on Led Zeppelin 4. So you're talking two albums prior, and of course, and then as a kid, I always used to get confused with the Houses the Holy. Why is Houses the Holy on Physical Graffiti?
Yeah.
You know, and I found it. They said because it sounded too much like the tempo and everything was too much like Dancing Days.
Ah, makes sense. So do you talk to the crowd when you're on stage, or does your singer do that? Who does most of the interaction, or is it a mixture?
It's a mixture, but mostly I tried to give them a sense of what, if it's an interesting fact or because it's a personal journey for me, and it still is. All these years later, I might remember a certain story about a certain song, or being with Dad at a certain event when a certain song was important. You know, so I will relay those stories to the audience, and it's so in some ways there's probably three sections of the show where there's a storytelling element. It's not just, you know, it's real. It's a heartfelt, emotional, you know, remembering, you know, when I'm playing it, I'm remembering things and just brings back things. And then of course I always say to James, you know, don't you are the front man. And he goes, I know, but it's your story to tell. You're the one, and people love the stories. They love, you know, those little things about what Dad was like at home, you know, because he wasn't Bonzo at home. He was Dad. He was a quiet guy, not the guy, you know, that was throwing TV sets through windows and doing weird things with fish.
That's true. He was your dad, and everybody's
Yeah,
dad is, there's a different experience in the people that they work with.
exactly. Yeah, that's why we only came out to three shows and it's, you know, I only ever saw three Led Zeppelin shows in my entire life.
So, speaking of Led Zeppelin, do you have, and this is like a two-pronged question here, do you have a favorite song that you love to listen to by Led Zeppelin? And do you have a favorite song by Zeppelin that you like to play? And are they the same song, or are they different songs because of different experiences?
I would definitely say the ultimate, I just think for a band that is sometimes classed as for being heavy or very blues based, or how they began, and, you know, a hard hitting band, and way more than Stairway. I always think if you ask, so if somebody comes up and says I'm a big fan, and I go, what's your favorite songs? And I always steer clear of the people that say, oh, I love rock and roll, I love Stairway, and I'm going, so you own Led Zeppelin 4? Okay, fair enough. So to me, the Rain song was one of the most beautiful, brilliantly written songs. The way it was orchestrated, the light and shade, the heaviness from the just the instrumental part at the beginning. I mean, to have the balls to the vocals doesn't even come in till for a minute. You know, you've got a minute of instrumental before any vocal comes in. Um, which, as you know, in those days, no wonder people were going nuts. You know, the radio people were going, "We can't play this. It doesn't. You know, it needs editing." Nope. And it was, and I'm so glad that they were allowed to be what they wanted to be. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the Led Zeppelin we know.
And it's
Um,
amazing. They're one of those bands that the true fans know every single song in their catalog.
yeah.
You know, it's like you have Led Zeppelin weekends that still happen, Led Zeppelin features that still happen. There's not many bands that could pull that off, and especially when you think about how long ago the band ceased to exist.
Oh, I mean that. I mean, and how short a time they had together. That's, you know, and that's one of those things that you suddenly go, they. And it's hard to think now when you go and I look at a young band, and I go, and how old are the guys in the band? And they're on their third album or whatever, and you go, they're still only in their mid-20s. You know, Zeppelin, by the time they'd got to their mid-20s, apparently they'd already written their masterpiece, like four, right? To the most of the world, the biggest album ever was Led Zeppelin 4. But they were kids. They were
Yeah.
just that's like us now saying, okay, yeah, certain band, how old are these guys? Yeah, they're on the third album. The next album they do will be for the remaining time of life, will be something that we sit by and go to. Such a different world, you know.
Yeah.
And the fact that they still had, I think, the evolution of Robert's voice was, and the evolution of writing for Zeppelin. You can listen to Led Zeppelin 1 and 2 and 3. But if you fast forward to physical graffiti, or even presence, it's another band. It's a different band. it sounds like they grew up, and it sounds like they've changed, and Robert's voice is totally different, but it's still amazing.
Hmm.
And it's I think that was it. We just look, they were chameleons of changing the vibe, you know. As I said, I'm sure every record company guy would have dreaded the moment that Led Zeppelin turned up with three, and they're thinking, yes, it's going to be a continuation of two. We're going to have riffs and riffs, and they teased them enough with. You can imagine the record company guy. All he did was play the opening track and went, "Oh, it's going to be huge," and doesn't realize then the majority of the album after Immigrant Song is pretty acoustic wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
yeah,
well, and also too, when you look at it from 2025 viewpoint, this is all stuff that's just, yeah, oh, this is Zeppelin. All this is
yeah,
Zeppelin. But here they are coming out. They're still new. They're doing the third album, and it's they want labels. They usually want the band to
yeah,
continue to keep doing what they're doing and not change.
yeah. They like that, I it works for certain bands. It's like to me, the Stones will be the Stones, and we want them to be the Stones, you know. David Bowie, he was a chameleon, and we wanted him to keep doing that. That was what we loved about him.
Yeah.
AC/DC, I can't imagine hearing AC/DC go into a whole other realm. We love them for the fact that it's rock and roll and the way they do it.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
imagine acoustic AC/DC.
no, I just can't imagine. Yeah, it's just that thing. And when an album comes out of theirs now, I always go, oh, thank God they stuck to their format, because that's what I love about them. The thing we loved about Zepp was the fact that they, I think now, I mean, maybe the fans back then would have been a slightly different, but for all of us now is the variety of music that they give you in a show. Most of the time on one album, it has enough night, light and shade that we can go from one genre to another, from folk to rock to blues, even the heavy stuff. And then we all know from After Kashmir, anything that has anything kind of Arabic or Egyptian kind of sounding we all went, oh, ripping Zeppelin off. Not that it
Mhm.
was, as soon as that vibe came out with Kashmir, every band afterwards, as soon as they went, you were like, oh, yeah, that's it. They're
Yep.
ripping Zeppelin off, And we all know, that the famous one was the Get It On by Kingdom. Kingdom came and Kingdom went.
Yep.
When, but, and it would have been great if they'd have just been honest and said, yeah, we love Zeppelin. But they didn't. So they just said, no, we never really listened to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think their nickname at the time was Kingdom Clone.
Yeah, I always used to go Kingdom Came and Kingdom Went. But I do love that. I did love that song. I actually think I
Yeah.
loved that song more than I loved anything of Greta Van Fleet's, really. So, uh,
Yeah, I saw them in concert back in the day, so I thought they were
yeah.
good live, and you know what? That's a great compliment to Led Zeppelin's legacy that so many bands wanted to emulate them.
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Well, and all of the, when you think about, when you watch the documentary, The Zeppelin, they were just wanting to emulate these great blues guys that they were listening to. They were finding these records at a time when you had to go and know the right knock on the door and the right street, and where you could listen to this, music that wasn't, mainstream, from Leadbelly and all of this, where they got their ideas from. So, as I said, I love that history part, and I think for us, I had to go back if I was going to do what I do and still do it. And I always said, you have to do the work, and to play the music that they played, you've got to know where it comes from,
Hmm. So
because
you've
otherwise,
studied, have you
yeah.
studied
So
the bands that they got into?
yeah, and it really helped me was the documentary that just came out. That really helped me go back and listen to stuff again and go and not worry about the drum sound. I can't really hear the drums on that track, or I can't hear this. because there was no drums on some of the stuff, and it was a microphone in a field recording a guitarist that was just singing, and so it's just to hear their vibe, and it's the grit, and then to go back to the '69, when they were a band called the New Yardbirds still, and you go back to those early recordings, which now with the wonders of YouTube we can.
Yes.
And we just log in. There's a great Fillmore, I think it's the Fillmore West 69. So it's a week after Cream played. And the manager, Peter Grant, said, if you guys fail tonight, it's over. So tonight is an important night. And they were doing songs like For What It's Worth. And they were doing the Buffalo Springfield song, For What It's Worth. And then, and they did like this 25-minute version of How Many More Times. It's phenomenal. The playing, then you look at the microphones. There's only still pictures, but you go to the pictures and there's two microphones on the drum kit. There's one above him and then there's one on the kick. That's it. That's how the drums are coming through. Just phenomenal.
It's amazing, and it must be, as John Bonham's son, it's got to be just an honor for you to keep his legacy going.
I feel it's important for me because when I was a kid, when you're that close to it, you don't understand. It's just your dad. And it wasn't until, and then when somebody leaves you and you didn't have a chance to get into this stage, to get older and wiser and appreciate all types of music. And that's the wonders of getting older, I think. From when you're younger, you can be narrow-minded or just stuck in a rut and listen to a certain type of music because it's a trend or whatever group of people you're traveling with at the time. For me, getting older, I like, much to some of my band's dismay, I like such a wide variety of music. I can offend guys in the band sometimes because they're like, I know it's your band, man, but can you just not be playing that music at 2 a.m, please? But, as I say, I'm a fan of all types of music. So for me, and so was Dad. That was the weirdest thing. You could never imagine John Bonham, believe it or not, was a huge, what's the guy? I'm trying to think of his name now. Barry White. My dad loved Barry White.
Wow.
And because it was soul. And it was and he loved the players in the band, right? So he would be, that song, I Can't Get Enough of You, Love, Babe. That song would play over and over. And my dad had this amazing Macintosh, from Binghamton, New York system, with the preamps and the power amps, solid state power amps. And that, and one of it was is it the Abandoned Caravanette, Hall and Oates? Is that the first album? With She's Gone on it, or it's got the whole intro to that. And Dad used to love the way that sounded on a stereo. He was big into that, and obviously Little Richard, Freddie King. If I heard Going Down another time, it would be one too many. He must have ended up, I think he wore out 4 copies of Rumors.
Wow.
He played Rumors so often that we had to keep buying more 8-tracks. And those are the days of 8-tracks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes people forget that musicians, and I think sometimes the fans of music styles are more gatekeepers than the actual musicians, where they forget that musicians are fans of music and they like all kinds of music other than the music that they play even.
Yeah. So it is one of those things. So if anything, I carry on and I think of him fondly as I do this, and not that I need to remind anybody, but it's nice to be able to play these songs. And I always said, while people want to come and see it, I will play it as long as I can do it to my best of my ability. I would stop if I felt I will never want to just collect the check. That would be this way beyond that I could ever imagine. The fact that we're still doing it and still enjoying it, 15 years after I said we'll do one tour, surprises me. It's the longest band I've ever been in, and I say that without joking. I've left my own band before, so for the fact that we've done this, and I think that the fact I keep it as a side project in a way, even though it's a it's a side project that I do for fun in between other gigs. I just finished the European tour with Black Country Communion again, which is Glenn Hughes, Joe Bonamassa, and myself and Derek Sherinian. We just did a whole run of European dates in festivals, which was phenomenal to get back to all the original stuff that I've written with them. And we were on our fifth album now, and we're going to do it again next year. And that was that's another fun part that I get to do. But I actually take that's like a fun. It's more serious. The Zeppelin thing to me, this is not my stuff. This is Dad's. This is Robert and Jimmy's and John Paul's. And I feel strongly about how, this has to be at a certain level, otherwise no point doing it. So I'm very pleased that we get to do it. And to do this after all the time we've been doing it, it's kind of given me a breath of fresh air again. It's made me think, what else could we do? Could we do a 4 and 5? Could we do could we do 4 and 5, House of the Holy? I can imagine the singer going, really? Are you kidding me? I'm 62 now. You want me to do it? You're making me. We're still trying to do what Robert was doing when he was 20 something, and we're all getting older. So, yeah, for all of us, I keep thinking, I'm trying to play drums like a 20-year-old guy on some a 25-year-old guy on some of these songs, and I'm going to be 60 next year. So,
well, it's definitely a labor of love, I can tell.
It is.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin evening here in Tucson on August 13th at the Rialto Theatre. You can get your tickets at the Rialto Theatre box office or online at klpx.com. Again, Jason, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Looking forward to seeing the show.
Thank you very much.